This thing is slow. All right. Live on there. Tweet it out. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on HawkFanatic.com. Season's greetings from Scott Docterman of The Athletic and myself, Rob Howe, recording on Thursday, December 29th, a little bit after 9 a.m. Central Time. I am in Iowa City at the homestead, at the home office. Scott, as you can see, if you're on YouTube, is in his hotel room in Nashville. How's the weather been? We saw a little snow earlier this week. Has it warmed up at all down there, Scott?
Yeah, it's been great. The last couple of days have been in the 50s. We've got to go to see practice for about 20, 25 minutes for the last 2 days, not today. And it was beautiful. The first day was 40 and it felt like 60. And then yesterday was about, in the mid 50s and it felt like about 70, because I'll say this, the drive down was just gross. It was nasty, but of course,
weather-wise,
yeah, it snowed most of the way, or then it was, the long state of Illinois, which is like 3 or 4 states wrapped up into one. It was nasty, but got here. Great city. Had a good time so far, and a lot of work done, and so yeah, here I am, man. It's 2 days before kickoff and a day before press conferences with the coordinators and Ferentz.
Yeah, and that will happen tomorrow, December the 30th. Check out Scott on Twitter and at The Athletic for great coverage from down there. Game is 2 days away, a little over 48 hours, 50 hours from now, roughly. So we'll see. We'll talk about that. We'll get into the game a little bit. We'll talk the story of the week, which is the NIL Swarm Collective for Iowa and the Iowa Athletic Department battle, or disconnect, I think is probably a better word.
Mm-hmm.
It's all those things wrapped up into one. It's unfortunate. And that's probably a good place to start today, Scott, just because I think it's on a lot of people's minds. And I'm not sure how people are viewing this bowl game. I think it's Iowa football, so people are, interested and will watch. But I don't think people know kind of what they're going to see here with absences on both sides of the ball, and the dynamic of Joe Labus being the quarterback, but probably not in a position to win the job. You'll hear that he probably does have a chance if he does stay to win the job, but it's Cade McNamara's to lose, and barring injury, it's probably his job. So I think if it was Labus and this was going to be the quarterback next year, there would be a little bit more excitement here, but I think that puts a damper on it a little bit. So you wrote today about the disconnect with Iowa and the Swarm Collective. Give the folks your thoughts on what you wrote and your view of what you know and what you've seen about this so far.
Yeah, this is I think it's reaching a critical point in the development of where this collective goes, and I think there are roadblocks that are placed in front of it by the Iowa Athletics Department, and some of which I know from Pat Hardy touched on or wrote earlier in the week from Hawk Fanatic. And I know, I got to talk to Kirk, me and Tom Kakert talked to Kirk on the side yesterday about his thoughts. And there really is a disconnect between Iowa athletics, the administration, and everybody else. Because you look at the Title IX ramifications, which I think is part of why they're doing this, or not. And really the crux of it is that they're not giving the collective data on many of the donors and season ticket holders, so it could send out materials to try to drum up money and support to pay student athletes. This is really a tipping point. I think right now, based on conversations with Kirk Ferentz yesterday. And, he was pretty strong in some of his, and I won't say criticism, but in his assessment of what's kind of going on there. And we'll talk to Gary Barta tomorrow at the press conference. But one among the things, that he said, and I just kind of quote, I suppose, is we have to find a way to be competitive and make sure we're comfortable with being where we're operating from. It's not only recruiting guys, but it's keeping our own guys. That's where it starts for us. We're not going to be a team of free agents. We're just not. I have no interest in it. And we take a lot of pride in the guys that come here and grow in our program. It's just you hear stories, and believe me, I've heard a few personally where so-and-so's made this offer to these guys, and it's just a reality. We've opened the door for this. So I think in my mind, if a guy has earned his way up the ladder and demonstrated he's really not only a good player, but a good team member, why would you want them to walk out the door? And, I think there's where some of the disconnect is, that I think Kirk feels, and I know Fran feels, that you need to do everything in your power to ensure that you field a competitive teams, especially in the revenue sports. And then you look at the other side, the flip side of until Gary really talks, and he did release a letter the other day, is that there are other concerns. We never provide that to a third party. Well, this is a different third party. This isn't like, somebody's having a planning committee in Cedar Rapids and they want to see if Iowa fans will show up and cheer or something. I mean, this is directly impactful to every aspect of Iowa athletics. It's bottom line, the way people feel about it, which is, that's really important. And then also the fear of losing what you've got. It's not only going out and getting players, it's making sure that nobody else leaves. And in 2 days, the bowl game's over. And, Kirk's talked about this. Other people on and off record have talked about this, that players are going to go home and they're going to get offers. They're going to talk to their buddies or guys they competed with or texted with. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, dude, I got this. And you're thinking, I didn't get that. And I'm not getting valued. And then you're spending money on free agents, basically. And then what about your guys who are just as good? So they've got to, and it's not unique to Iowa, but what's unique is the barrier placed in front of the collective in making sure that they take care of their own, because there was a lot of momentum after Cade McNamara just 4 weeks ago. And you had their numbers quadrupled. And you're really going to try to stop that progress, because as we saw this year, there's not a lot of difference between 10-2 and 7-5. It's maybe a couple of players. You lose those players, you're losing trophy games, you're not going to bowl games, and your season ticket sales plummet. So I don't know, Rob. I mean, I just talked a lot there. I mean, what's kind of your thoughts about this?
No, I share pretty much your outlook and perspective on this. And it's been something you and I have talked about pretty consistently through this whole process, from, the Supreme Court decision to where we are now. And in my mind, for the most part, Iowa has lagged behind the competitors in this. And that's no fault of the Swarm, because I think the Swarm is a good idea and it gets it. Brad Heinrichs understands the landscape and is trying to help Iowa, and meeting resistance in doing so, I think, is counterproductive. But I would be lying, Scott, if I said this surprised me, because we've seen the administration in the Iowa athletic department be reactive instead of proactive for a while. In a lot of areas. It's proactive in some areas. I don't want to dump on it completely, but if you look at what's going on in college athletics and what your competitors are doing, I don't understand Iowa's approach to this. I get that there's some reluctance because of Title IX and lawsuits that have happened already, and black eyes that have been incurred because of missteps in this area. But there are different dynamics here. The Swarm is not related to the university. So Title IX is going to be an interesting case if it was made against the collective, because it's not directly associated with the Iowa athletic department. And just if you look around again at what competitors are doing, it doesn't seem like they have that same concern, paranoia about what's going to happen. I wonder if this is coming from above Gary. If this is the university as a whole. I mean, the letter he released the other day, Scott, had general counsel stamped all over it. That read like a legal document more than anything else. So I don't know, and I don't know what the solution is here. The solution is for Iowa's athletic department to be more what's the word I'm looking for? More accommodating to the swarm. And that's really up to them. I don't think there are huge barriers here unless there are people above Gary tying his hands.
Yeah, exactly. I think from many of the conversations I've had with people in the know, it's more of Gary and legal counsel on one side and the administration, whether that's just Gary or some of his subordinates on one side, and then you have kind of whether they're agnostic or whatever, the Board of Regents, because there doesn't seem to be this kind of concern with the We Will collective at Iowa State. The regents are agnostic. I don't know about the president's office. I don't think that Barbara Wilson would be in the way. I haven't seen or heard anything to suggest that. And then on the other side is the collective and the coaches. And, even the players. Last night there was a big official party at the Wild Horse Saloon. And
is that called a hoedown down there? Is that a...
It felt like it. I don't know. It got pretty starchy there for a while. We can talk about that later. But, there was some real strong smack talk going on there. But, I was having, just casual conversations with several players, just, not anything on record, but that got brought up, even ones that, are directly impacted or won't be. It's a talking point among the fans, the players. And that's scary because if you give the impression that, oh, this thing's going to fail, you're not keeping anybody. And so that's where you got to be careful. And I thought Gary's letter, he tried to, it was a milquetoast effort in trying to pacify everybody. And I think it's easy to see through it that it's just not feasible. You're going to have to embrace it. And, the Title IX ramifications, I'm sure legal counsel has given him, here's what we think or how we interpret it. If you embrace it, if you push people in this direction, then it can be interpreted as embracing something that's not, equal to everyone on your, and blah, blah, blah. But nobody else is interpreting it that way. When you have Ohio State, Michigan, North Carolina, Penn State, and others that have really decided, no, we're just pushing this as far as it goes. I think that's the way Iowa needs to go. And to try to suggest that the collective should be that inclusive to involve all 600 plus athletes is ridiculous. Come on. If I'm Joe Fan on the street and I'm, just paying them, whether I'm paying the minimum or a little more to the swarm to go to players, no offense, but man, I want it to go to Cade McNamara. I want it to go to a receiver. I want it to go to a defensive end. Maybe a center on the basket. I want a post player for the basketball team, and I want to keep Caitlin Clark. And I don't give a shit about the rowing team. Now they're somebody's daughter, and but there should be, maybe Gary Barta should say, look, we really encourage somebody to put together other collectives or involving the Olympic sports. And we would be wholly supportive of those efforts and stuff too. But you cannot attach this. Here comes the real hard facts. I called it an uppercut. In the last pre-COVID year of financial statistics, Iowa sports directly, the sports alone directly made $97 million. Football was 81 million out of that. Men's basketball was 11.5 million. So you're going to try to say that the football program and the tennis and women's tennis need to be treated equally. Come on, it's just not the way it's going. And it's not just women's tennis. I mean, Brad Heinrichs played golf, and he's like, hey, I'm a big supporter. I'm a donor. But it's not the same thing. If you have your choice between the third leg of a 4x1 track, on your track team versus a wide receiver, 99 out of 100 are going to take.
Unless the guy can do both.
Yeah, he better do both. That's what I mean. And Joey Woody would understand that, I think. And so that's really, you've got to get behind. You can't even let this perception linger or get out there. And instead, now they're mad at, there's some anger and resentment towards Brad for coming out and whether it's talking about it or dishing out it on a message board and on Twitter or whatever. But the fact is, you're right. We talked about it a long time ago, that how reactive Iowa has been in this marketplace. And the reactiveness is the athletics department. It's not the coaches. They've wanted it since day one. It's not Kirk Ferentz and being old school. He's all in. He wants it now, and he wants it to get players and keep his own players. And Fran McCaffrey's been the same way too. So because the reverse is you start to lose these players. I mean, we saw it this year. You lose to Illinois by 3, you lose to Iowa State by 3, you lose to Nebraska because, you get a couple players hurt and your depth isn't very good at those positions. And then all of a sudden, what's stopping Wisconsin from bouncing back and beating Iowa? Especially if they have a player and Iowa doesn't. It's a trickle down effect that becomes really a downpour very, very quickly.
Yes, and time is of the essence, as you wrote about. It's not something you can kind of, we'll work it out over time, over the next second. You don't have time to do that. And they were given kind of a heads up or a dose of reality with the basketball program. Fran lost out on not only high school recruits, but transfers. Mm-hmm. And they should have seen back then, okay, this impacted our revenue sport. What does that mean for our bigger cash cow, which is the football program? Let's look ahead. Let's have some foresight into what could happen at the end of football season when the transfer portal opens. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any of that. It was just, collective, you do what you need to do. We're not involved in it. And meanwhile, you're watching that happen at other places, and there's reaction to support and help out the collective. Yeah. And I don't see why you couldn't just say, if somebody's donating, especially the big money donors, Scott, they can earmark their money before NIL, before collectives. We want to donate to the football facility upgrade. We want to donate to Carver upgrade. We want to help the baseball program and update the facility over there. That's where we're going to decide where our money wants to go or where we want our money to go. Why can't you do that in a collective state? Send out a friggin', a form that says, okay, I'm donating this, and here's a checklist of the sports where I want my money to go. Mm-hmm. How is that a violation of Title IX? It's not. If you're donating, to wherever, a charity, just as somebody in society, you decide where you want your money to go. I don't get it.
If there's a money quote here from Kirk yesterday, it's this. He said, it's a different era than 5 years ago, where typically we're thinking about facilities and things like scholarships, all those things. They're not changing. But I think we all have to change our priorities right now. And he goes, because I'm out recruiting and you just see what's going on in the real world. You hear a lot of things. Nobody has any way of knowing what is factual, what isn't. There's a lot of embellishment going on. But that being said, it's real. And so when really, people watch the uniforms first. They watch the black and gold. That's their, the Tiger Hawk on it. But second is probably high-level coaches, 2A, and B is the players. The rest of it is icing on the cake. But you got to eat the cake. The icing by itself isn't going to be any good. And I think that's where they're sitting right now, that you've got to embrace this. It's just any other, even mixed signals, which this is mixed signals, and I'm sure tomorrow when Gary's available, he'll circle around in a figure eight around the topic. And, but you've got to be in. You're in or you're out. And I think I have not seen a more divisive issue between the coaches and the administration than this one in, the close to 20 years now that I've been covering this program.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, because I think it's more illustrated of we can see it. I don't see how an athletic department can't see it. Back at the front end of this, Scott, we were saying the situation now is you're going to have to tell your donors as the athletic director and fundraisers in the athletic department, hey, you've been giving to our, whatever fund, facilities upgrades, wherever your money has been earmarked for as a donor, we think you might want to put some into the collective now, because this is important. This is a different age, as Scott said. This is a different era, different time. We need you to donate to the players. And it doesn't seem like the athletic department wants to do that. I don't know if that's the holdup or what. That I know the Title IX thing is I don't want to say it's a convenient excuse, because it's a reality, and you do face litigation for that, and it's something you have to be cognizant of. And Iowa hasn't always been good in that area as it is anyway. And I understand that being a roadblock, but I think in this case you are able to work around that just based on what you see competitors doing, unless everybody's going to be sued.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe everybody will be, but and maybe that's what needs to happen at some point, to bring some sort of stability, because it is clearly the wild, wild west out there. There are really no laws. It's like Deadwood, when it comes to athletics, because there's nothing going on there. So, but Iowa's not unique, and except for the fact that it's using Title IX as some sort of barrier to how they present this to their fans, their donors. And, and writing an open letter and sending it out on email and then posting it on the website, that's all well and good. But, when you see Bubba Cunningham doing stuff at basically at North Carolina, telling their supporters, hey, we can hold off on some of this other stuff. You better support the collective. Why? Because if the fans have a chance to say, well, we really want to have this, extra addition in the football facility, or win championships of some sort, it's a no-brainer. Win the championship. And I think right now, when you look at Iowa's facilities, they're not really going to fall behind. And the reason why facilities were such a big deal all along is because there's nothing else to spend your money on.
Yeah.
So they spent it on golden toilets and boom boxes, and I am clearly dating myself now, but iPods or whatever in every locker and that's fine. Okay, everything's great there, but it's really the players now it's not about the candy, it's about the money, and show them the money, and that's where the collective comes in. And if it's counterproductive to me to stand in the way of this, or not to wholly embrace it more than that, because they'll say, we're not standing in the way, we're telling people thank you for supporting this, blah, blah, blah. No, you need to get your arms around and say, we absolutely support this because we support our coaches. And this is the one way that we can, what's the first words of his mantra? Win, graduate, do it right. Win, baby. Winning is everything. Go do it. It's, and right now, if you're not selling it, you're behind. And, going back to the spring, Rob, I remember talking to him about, hey, you guys are behind, what's going on here? Oh, no, we don't feel like we're behind, Gary was saying. And I'm, communicating with colleagues of mine who cover A&M and cover Miami and some of the SEC schools. And they're all like, this is crazy. They're flying around on jets with some of these donors because of NIL. And yet here at Iowa, it was like it took Brad Heinrich stepping up and becoming, whatever you want to say, the greatest Hawkeye fan in the world to ensure that they have a collective, because they're not getting Cade McNamara without a collective. They're not getting Eric All without a collective. They're not keeping their players without a collective. And so you've got to make sure to do that, because if football wanes, football goes 5-7 next year, everybody suffers from that. And you can't just be high and mighty and holier than thou and think, well, yeah, but we're treating everybody equal. Well, there's no equality when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just for people that aren't, don't follow this very closely, Iowa had stumbled a little bit out of the gate with NIL, more than it should have. And then, as Scott said, Brad stepped in. This isn't a situation where Brad's making a bunch of money off Iowa, and he's doing this to support his motivation is to make Iowa competitive in this market. That's his motivation. He's not trying to get money out of this. So that's an important thing to think about here. He's not trying to shake down Iowa athletics. And, the landscape has changed a lot, Scott, with the new media rights deal. That money all goes to Iowa. They'll have money for the shit they need, for upgrades and what have you. And they can still solicit donations for projects that they need. And you have the wrestling program that raised money for, the renovations at Carver. Most programs, a baseball team is upgrading its facilities. Most of the athletic programs over there have support from, their group of fans / donors, but it's a different level with football and men's basketball. You need a lot more to keep up with the Joneses. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. I don't see that, you're hurting the rest of your athletic department by earmarking and directing money towards the programs that make you money.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. Again, it illustrates, at that same fiscal year I talked about earlier, they raised in contributions $36 million. 34 of it was non-specific. So if you're talking about non-specific, which is like iClub memberships and, and just other entities, people just giving to the department, and it's not necessarily earmarked towards a specific sport or an entity or what have you. Come on, it's football, basketball related. It's football related mostly, but it's also basketball related because you're talking about people who, there's a reason why on the old iClub circuit, Kirk talked last or Fran talked last. It's because those are the people that, and then they always throw an assistant football coach or an assistant basketball coach with the opposite, because those are the sports that people care about the most. They just does. And I think most people can see that and understand that. And it's like, hey, if the football program is more successful, the money does filter down to these other sports. You can have more of this, more of that. And there's nothing stopping another collective being formed. Or Gary pushing for another collective and saying, look, we really love this. We think we would love to have collectives for all of our sports. And so if any of you are interested or hopeful in donating towards a, Swarm or whatever, the Christine Grant collective, name it after somebody like that, and then push her out, and then that way they're not going to get the same amount of money as football, but any kind of money. But, like Brad used this, I talked to him yesterday, and example of, there might be somebody who wants to donate $1,000 for the rowers, but if they have 20 scholarships, basically divided among 75, 80 athletes, all of them are going to get 10 to 15 bucks, that's, but then again, if I'm donating, and you're expecting, hey, this is going to be helpful to get the next Caden Proctor or to keep Catty McNamara or whomever, you want to make sure that it provides that. And so, so I think this is, I know it's when Gary has to go into a room, he has to talk to all the coaches, and all the athletes want to feel like they're important, and they are. They're people, they're human beings. Nobody's more important than anybody. But the reason why some, the head coaches make millions and the sports writers don't, just like there's reasons why the football players in this era make money. And other sports do not as well. And the one that really I think is kind of stuck, if you want to get in the weeds here, I think is baseball, because baseball is a highly competitive sport in the South, and it's an important sport in the North for collegiate purposes, but they're not going to have the backing, the financial backing, and they're not part of the collective. Whether it's wrestling will survive. I think it'll end up having a collective at some point, but baseball's the one that's kind of in the middle, that's important to be competitive, but there's nothing really there giving them any kind of funding.
No, and I think you have I agree with everything you said, Scott. I think you have the framework now. You have the, albeit limited, you have Brad, who's now been doing this for whatever it is, 6-8 months. So if there were other, you could either have, the Swarm Collective as like the parent company, if you will, and then the smaller collectives below it, or branches of the Swarm Collective, or you could just have the Swarm Collective be able to tutor other donors that want to start these other collectives for other sports, and you can group them with, by gender. You can group them just by individual sports. Like you have men's and women's track. So, maybe men's, women's track, cross country, then, each individual sport, because there are people that support all of those sports still anyway. You can, the university could then look at it and say, okay, football's getting a lot of donations. Football's getting a lot of money. It's helping, it's sustaining itself. So now we have in our athletic department budget, we have some money to play with here that we got because of the football program and the media rights deal. And we can dedicate some of our budget in the athletic department to some of the sports that aren't getting as much money from the collectives. It's money management. You just figure out where your fund, you need to bring the money in and then allocate it to make sure. I don't see it being that much different than it was before, other than you have the donors organized into a collective.
I agree. It's it really, you wonder how much of this is protecting your own from the Gary Barta, making sure that, well, we've budgeted for this and we don't want to lose what we have as far as donations go. And we're willing to, we just want to make sure that nothing falters on our end. But when you're talking about, a sizable bump again with the new media rights deal with CBS and NBC jumping aboard, and you're going to have more money there. It just, to me, it behooves them to suggest to donors and then others to contribute to those other sports, but also contribute to this in a helpful way. And, I got a text from somebody who's actually watching this live and said, something I'm thinking about, will there be a need for facilities fundraising when the school gets close to $100 million from TV? And you look at it, and I think there will be, when it comes to some things, maybe a new basketball arena someday. I'm just throwing that out there. But, there will be a need for it, but it's just not. I think right now, again, to me, facilities were one of those things where, hey, we've got to spend our money on something. And the kids see the bling, and that automatically attracts them to the wow factor when they walk into this facility and stuff. But now that they have the opportunity to get paid, that the bling factor is secondary. They're going to go to schools based on how much they're going to get paid. I mean, if it's, it's one thing if it's a couple $1,000s here and there, but if you're talking about the difference between I'm getting $150K from this school versus 75 from that school, but man, they sure do have nice fountains in the locker room. They're going to go to 150K. They're just like everybody else. They show me the money.
But they have a recovery pool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's different. You have to think proactively and fit, just look at what is most important to student athletes now. and what it means. Because I'm with you, and you talked about this kind of on the front end of the conversation. I think as hard as it is to lose, what Fran did in the spring and summer with the transfer portal, or losing a Caden Proctor, or maybe some other guys in the transfer portal now that you're losing to other schools that are giving more. That retention for a program like Iowa, a developmental program, you develop somebody, that comes in as a 2 or 3 star, and you make them all Big Ten, and they're not from Iowa. They don't have connections. They've been here a couple years maybe, and somebody comes with a nice offer. Yeah, those people will probably get raked over the coals social media wise. They don't give a shit. They're getting a bunch of money. Yeah. And that's the important thing. If you can't retain the players that you pay your coaches a shitload of money to develop players, to make them competitive, to make Iowa one of the better teams in the Big Ten. And we also hear, it's just little old Iowa. Go look at the numbers. Go look at the budgets. Iowa's a top 15, top 20, top 15 athletic department in the country. It can compete. It should be able to compete the way it has been competing. It just is a different landscape, a different market now. So, yeah, to me, losing, Justin Jacobs. Mm-hmm. What if that keeps happening? And I'm not saying Justin Jacobs left just for money. Right. His story is his story, and every story is different. But you're losing an all Big Ten type linebacker when you're losing one of the best linebackers that ever played in the program. That's a big deal. And that's somebody you lost instead of being able to retain.
Well, look at the current situation. What if Luke Lachey says, look, I'm looking over at Eric All and he's making this. I'm not. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I'm now an NFL prospect. Let's face it, he is. He to me could be one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends in the Big Ten next year. And Eric All could be as well. They could have a tandem, and we've talked about it, that could rival Hawkinson and Fant. But, after this bowl game, he's going to go home to Columbus, Ohio, and see his dad. And, and there's going to be all kinds of Ohio State people around. And if Iowa takes care of him on the front end, no problem. Iowa shuffles its feet because it doesn't have the money, because the athletic director doesn't want to fully embrace it. And next thing you know, somebody over there is like, hey, we'll offer you 6 figures to come to the Buckeyes. Grew up a Buckeyes fan. Dad's a Buckeyes All-American, does the radio for the Buckeyes. And
less travel for the parents.
Oh, yeah. You throw all those things out there, and then, it's going to be hard for him to resist. And then it's like, that's what would kill you, is you develop somebody who that program didn't want, but you turn them into a NFL caliber player, which Iowa does and has done, really in the last 40 plus years. That's what kills you as a program. And Justin Jacobs is another example, but I think that's probably a little bit different, because Luke Lachey has never made it a case of not being happy here or whatever. And I'm not saying, Justin had injuries, so maybe, that's certainly.
And I just use it as, there's more to the story, but just an example of, a situation where and Justin, maybe that's not a great example because he came in as a 4-star and had offers from Ohio State, but Iowa still developed him. It's not like Xavier Wankpa.
Yeah.
He's a 4-star, but he's developing right now. And then once he realizes that potential, because you've developed him, that's when he becomes a bigger commodity.
Well, when Cooper DeJean has a pick 6 on Saturday, and I'll just throw that out there. Let's say he does. You don't think that other SEC teams are going to see that and wonder about him? He's a Western Iowa kid, so maybe he's kind of untouchable. Like Tyler Linderbaum would never have left Iowa. Right. I don't think I think if Iowa could magically just pay him his NFL salary, he'd probably stay at Iowa forever. Maybe Jack Campbell would be the same way. but other kids aren't, and so what are they worth in the open market? And that's really what the crux of Kirk's discussion is. They want to make sure that they maintain what they have, because Iowa, when it's good and it's maintaining and it's developing, and the good players that you kind of have this tiered system where you do get the 4 stars and they perform like 4 stars, and then you get the lower level guys, and then they develop them, and then by the time they're in year 3 or 4 and then 5 especially, then Seth Benson, and then you're like, damn, he's one of the 5 best linebackers in the Big Ten. You don't want to lose that. That's what makes Iowa special. That's why Iowa has that toughness. So when they do win those big upsets, it's because they're the tougher team. They're tough motherfuckers out there. And you don't want to lose that. And Kirk Ferentz certainly doesn't either. So I think, and then you want to supplement it too, because it is, and I think Iowa, you look at the players it's lost, there have been reasons, I think, for many of them, whether they weren't happy at Iowa, whether there's their playing status or whatever, Arlen Bruce or Keegan Johnson. Okay. That happens. Same thing with Reggie Bracey. He was trapped on the depth chart. That happens. Alex Padilla, you're not going to be the starter. You're not good enough. Okay. That's fine. But you don't want to lose the guys. It's like, losing muscle and then bone. It's just not going to work. And so that's why, to me, when I look at, what are you gaining, Gary Barta, by standing there, creating these barriers that nobody else in the country is creating? You're not standing up for something. You're standing to get something.
And again, being proactive, we see what could happen. Mm-hmm. It isn't happening. There's not a rash of, attrition right now because of this, but the potential is there. So how can you proactively, prevent that? Don't wait until it cripples your program to do something. It can happen now. Mm-hmm. You see it happening elsewhere in the country. Your football coaches and basketball coaches are on the recruiting trail, seeing it happen, seeing the stories, getting an understanding of what the landscape is. Don't just wait for something bad to happen and react to it. It's because I think if you stay behind in this market, you're going to suffer big time. It's not, and you're really costing yourself everything you've built, all the equity you've built up. You need to pay attention to that and secure what you have and build upon that in what the new market is. You can't just let it go. You can't just say, "Oh well, we'll figure it out as we go." You got to go after it now.
This is an interesting thread, somebody highlighted off my story. It's from a sports legal attorney regarding Title IX. And I probably should read through this because I think it's really fascinating. I haven't had a chance yet, but he's like, here's a thread regarding Title IX compliance. Title IX has 3 components. Is the school providing adequate sports participation opportunities to males and females? Is the school distributing athletics-related financial aid on an equitable basis? Are amenities tied to sports participation being allocated fairly? Endorsing an NIL collective has nothing to do with components 1 and 2. So I can't see Iowa's lack of an endorsement being related to those 2 components, which brings up component 3, which must be the one Iowa's concerned about. Personally, I don't see the issue, and that is, our amenities tied to sports participation being allocated fairly. By endorsing an NIL collective, Iowa's not providing an amenity to its athletes. It's endorsing a private business that already exists. Iowa's athletics department is exhibiting some measure of control over the collective. That could lead to Title IX issues. Sufficient control could lead to the collective being deemed part of the athletic department, making the collective itself subject to Title IX. There's no evidence that's the case. And as a privately funded third-party business, an NIL collective is not subjected to Title IX's requirements for college athletics programs. That's from Mitt Winter from Winter Sports Law. So I think this is fascinating because they're being prudent, extra cautious, when in fact you need to be more aggressive. And Iowa has kind of sat back and watched it all unfold, and now is not the time to do that. I mean, 6 months ago was not the time to do it, but now it certainly isn't. So I think this is a critical juncture, because you start to lose these players, the whole structure collapses. Because again, you lose those games that matter, you lose rivalry games, you get blown out by big teams, you don't make bowl games, your coaches decide to leave, then, remember that there was a 20-year wasteland between Evie and Hayden Fry. Iowa's not far from that. Just look at Nebraska. Nebraska has all the resources it needs, but it's had bad coaches. Iowa has good coaches. But remember the Licklider era? The players that were there, I mean, they were damn lucky to have Matt Gates. And why? Because he's from Iowa City.
Yep.
The other players, there were players leaving every year. They were terrible. That's what you get if you don't pay your players in today's world. Until the rules change, these are the rules. You got to deal with it. And if Iowa can't embrace it, they need somebody else at the top who can.
And I know I hear people say, well, how can the collective not be communicating with the athletic programs? They do. I mean, the collective didn't go out and say, hey, we're just going to get Cade McNamara for you. The Iowa coaches have to want Cade McNamara.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there is discussion there. There is a relationship there, but it's not part of the athletic department. I think some fans kind of get that mixed up, so to speak. It runs itself. It's just, again, it's donors saying, where would you like our money to go? Where would you like our money to go in terms of student athletes coming into the program? Where would you like our money to go in terms of retaining student athletes that are already in the program? Again, to me, I'm not sure how that violates Title IX.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think, and then it could be a little PTSD from some of the lawsuits in the past, but that, what? That's the problem. Those are self-induced. Those are self-induced. Those are their problems. And in this case, you can't, if you're scared of that, then somebody else needs to be running it. I mean, I'm trying not to be too harsh here, but if you're fearing lawsuits because of Title IX lawsuits you've had in the past based on your own actions, then somebody else needs to be running it, because you just can't afford to live in fear and protectionism over what you have because you're afraid you're going to lose it. That maybe these donors will give to that instead of you, and that, you've got all this other money coming in. It's really, to me, you've got to decide how to win. And you can't just use the mantra of the department as some sort of a shield to protect you in certain ways.
No question. We'll see how this goes. It seems like this is a consistent topic for us on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. I imagine it will continue to be. We'll get into some football now, get into previewing this game a little bit, maybe grab a couple of your questions off of YouTube. As I've told people before, we do the mailbag podcast on Tuesday. That's more of an interactive question and answer podcast. We'll get to what we can in here. I can't physically type answers to your questions in the YouTube chat room. It makes this wonky when I'm trying to do a podcast, but Scott and I will try to answer some questions that I pull out of there. And we'll do that after this read and a few words from our sponsors. The first one being that support for this podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. We're going to hear from a few more sponsors now, Scott, and we'll be back on the other side to talk some football and maybe get to some of your questions. So hang in there, guys. And back we are, as Yoda would say. Let's see here. I did want to mention, you heard from some of our sponsors there. Ariza Asian cuisine restaurant is open on New Year's Day, as it was open on Christmas Day. So check those folks out. Proud supporter of the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast and all the podcasts here on the Hawk Fanatic feed. Scott, I've heard this question or I've seen this kind of being talked about. I think it's just the nature of the paranoia of the fan. Charles Heaston, or Heston, will Labus be in the portal after the game? This is the one I've seen this, and I'm like, it seems like a kind of a reach, unless that's been put out there by him or other people.
I think there's always I think this year in particular and part of last year, there's a tilt towards the negative side of this. No, I mean, I don't think there's any indication that he'll be in the portal. He's excited about his opportunity to play or to give it to start. I mean, this is his first college start. It's coming in a bowl game, and it's not horribly far from his home. I mean, Northeast Ohio. I haven't heard of anything to say that. I think, if anything else, if he has a good performance, now he can compete. Maybe he can compete with Cade McNamara. It won't matter. I mean, Cade will be the starter, at least early, but, make it tough. And then a year from now, do it. But I haven't heard anything to suggest that he's going to be in the portal, or Carson May is going to be in the portal, or Sam Laporta, who's also taking snaps, will be in the portal. He'll be in the NFL draft portal, but it's. I tell you what, watching the zone read yesterday with Sam Laporta running it, and then rolling outside and throwing passes. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Be nice to see that on Saturday.
Yeah.
I'd be all for it. I mean, It's an exhibition game. I know everybody wants to win, but get creative, have some fun. In terms of Labus in May, I mean, you can't just go into the portal thinking, oh, I'm going to go somewhere great and it's going to be a better situation. I think we're going to see more and more, Scott, as time moves on, that players are going to be a little bit more diligent before they go into the portal of finding a landing spot. I know we hear tampering and things like that, but again, it's the Wild West. I don't think you just go in the portal as Joey Labus, a guy who's been in the college program for 2 years, played one game, goes in there and you expect that you're going to get NIL money and be in a better situation. Maybe that turns out that way. But it's kind of that two-way street. There are a lot of guys in the portal right now that are going to sit in there for a while. You don't want to be one of those guys. You want to kind of secure your future a little bit. And I'm not sure I can see right now a better situation for Joe Labus than what he has.
Yeah. Tell me where Alex Padilla has landed.
Yeah.
He hasn't yet. Tell me what kind of scholarship Deuce Hogan got. None. I saw him last night. He's a walk-on fourth string quarterback in Kentucky. He started the year as the number 2. Now he's the number 4.
And Kentucky got one of the better quarterbacks out of the transfer portal.
Right, exactly. Devin Leary. So I think, he could transfer, but where is he going to transfer to? He's in the Big Ten now. He won't be in the Big Ten tomorrow if he transfers. I mean, he'll be lucky to be an FCS quarterback, and have a starting role. So he's only in his second year. Give it some time, see what happens. Maybe he has a good game. Maybe he doesn't, and
if he gets to the Alex Padilla point where he graduates from Iowa, I don't blame Alex. I mean,
no,
this is a good move for him. He wasn't good. I mean, his eligibility is almost up. They bring in Cade McNamara, he's got to do for him, but it's a completely different situation between him and Joe.
Yeah. And Alex had the opportunity to play in this game and still hit the portal. Kirk asked him that, hey, would you be willing to do that? Just play in the game and you're still in the portal. He said no. So, that's that. I think that's what's kind of fascinating. So, no, I don't have any thought or reservation about that. I mean, I think it's more likely than not that he probably goes something like 6 of 14 for 85 yards. Maybe he has a nice pass. He probably has an interception. I mean, this is a good defense that they're playing. So I don't see anything that makes me go, wow, he threw for 350 yards. Although DeAndre Square leaving is a big deal for Kentucky. But, I think that and they're one of their top corners is out as well. And it's going to be. I wouldn't worry about it. I think don't try not to worry about the portal. I think if there are people leaving the portal, there are probably 15 guys I'd worry about more than that, just to start with, and then maybe more.
Yes. And there will be people going in and people coming out, people going in from Iowa, people coming to Iowa. We'll have a much more active January, as I've talked about on the podcast before, in terms of recruiting, high school, junior college, transfer portal. Roster management is now a 12-month-a-year endeavor. We see windows here, but be a lot of discussion outside of those recruiting windows too, and trying to build relationships and, improve your roster, improve your program. So
yeah,
interesting to see where that goes from here. Had somebody ask in here, I can't remember who asked it, but I apologize, about Kirk donating to the Swarm Collective. He makes a lot of money. That's a no-no.
Yeah, that's not allowed. Because, how easy would it be to funnel, hey, we're going to pay our coach $10 million a year or $15 million a year, and then magically there's a $5 million donation to the Swarm or any other collective. You don't think that wouldn't happen at Bama or Kentucky basketball? Or
There aren't a lot of rules, but there are some rules.
Yeah, there's some rules, and that would get caught, because there are open records and there are things, So
he can speak for the collective, and he did speak for the collective, and do promotional spots to get fans, to encourage donors to give to the collective. I wonder when he recorded. Do you know when he recorded that message because it was from his office? That wasn't done from Nashville.
Yeah, it was previously. I know there's ones of Fran and Lisa coming too, but it was one that was recorded that hadn't been released yet, and there were a lot of people pissed off that it wasn't released yet. So it just got released yesterday. So yeah, he's done it previously. They know the deal, and there's a lot of fear, and I get it, because Kirk is. It appears, and it's true, he's kind of a conservative, risk-averse coach when it comes to on the field, and they were really tepid about getting in the portal last year, it seemed. There's no more fear there about that. They want to get the right guys. They don't want to just get anybody, but man, he's all in on this. And, his comments yesterday suggested that. And he said it before practice too. He said it to me and Tom Caker. And he was more like, I'd love to talk more about this, but I got to, I also still have to figure out a way to get first downs on Saturday.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I released my preview yesterday. I picked Iowa to win 13-10. So there's your spoiler. I'm not sure either offense is going to have a lot of success in this game, Scott. You have quarterbacks with very little experience to no experience at this level. And that's, it's the most important position. And Iowa has struggled this year. What do you look for in this game if you're Iowa? What do you want to see if you're the Iowa coaches or Iowa fans?
I think, first of all, you want to see a team that's invested. I think you want to see a team that's passionate about playing. And they are. They're very much that way. In talking to, three people who I'm actually writing about tomorrow, highly had high accolades through their careers. Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, and Riley Moss are all in. Absolutely could not be more excited to play one more time. There seems to be an energy with this team. Now, will that translate on Saturday? I don't know. They could make a ton of mistakes and lose 14-6 because, they had 4 turnovers on offense and stuff. But I think overall, you want to see a team that's committed, has great effort, plays hard. I think on offense, you want to see them run the ball. I think that's their way to win. It's because trying to expect a freshman quarterback who's never taken a snap before in Iowa to magically go out there and throw for 250 and 3 touchdowns is just unrealistic. But I think what is realistic is for the offense to block well offensively up front, and for Caleb Johnson to continue to solidify his status as an upper level running back in the Big Ten. And I think if they take care of that on offense and defense play just really at the same level, and they'll probably be way more successful at it than they have been in the past. Because, the number that stands out for me with Kentucky, and they're ranked 124th in the country with allowing 42 sacks. There's no way Will Levis was going to play in this game. I was sacked him 7 times last year, and their offensive line is way worse. They had 2 really good NFL tackles. One couldn't play in the game, but one left went to the NFL. They're going to brutalize Kentucky's quarterback. It's going to be gross. And so can Iowa turn interceptions off of that? Yeah. I keep coming back. I think Iowa might win decisively on this one. I don't know if I have a prediction score-wise, but if they allowed more than 10 points, it would be because of offensive issues, not Kentucky going up and down the field on them. I would be, if you're going to tell me it's going to either be 17 or 0, they're going to allow, I'm going to say 0. I just don't think that they're going to move the ball very well unless there's some interceptions, fumbles, those types of things.
So here's the setup. Lucy's holding the football. You're Charlie Brown. She's telling you again, we're going to see some wrinkles here. We've got a quarterback that can run. We're going to roll him out. You're going to see some innovation here on offense. Are you running up there as Charlie Brown, Scott, getting ready to kick that ball as far as you can, or is it getting pulled away again?
He's going to kick the ball.
You're good.
I know.
You heard it here on the Hotspot. Scott's anticipating some innovation on offense.
I believe there will be innovation on offense this time. If it was Alex Padilla at quarterback, I would say I might turn around and walk the other way. But I think this is the only way that Joey, we need to
What is it? Is it Joe or Joe? What does he want to go by?
Well, we'll have to ask him. We did that. Remember, it was that way with Nate Stanley.
Yes.
We asked him, how do you want to go? Do you want to go Nathan or Nate? He said, Nate. Okay, you're Nate forever.
He said his mother calls him Nathan.
Yeah.
So he wanted to be called Nate by everybody else.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's like when parents start using that middle name, you're in trouble. So yeah, that's I think in this case, that's the way that they're going to have to move the ball. Let's just do something different. And whether you consider it an exhibition, a game, it is a game. It matters. It's on TV and people care about it. They're driving here, or and then even sports writers are driving in 9.5 hours worth of snow and sleet to get here, or have their flights stopped for 2 days. And
I get a kick out of the people that just say that these bowls don't matter. I've watched a ton this year, Scott, as I have in the past. I'll watch if there's a bowl game on, I'll watch it if I can. You can see how invested most of these players are in win. They're playing a game. They're competitors. They want to win.
Yeah. Well, right. And it may not matter to you, Joe fan, but it matters to them because they're the ones that in the summer are getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go lift and running in the hot weather and then playing in Minnesota when it's -1 and windy. And they're doing this and they're playing with a shoulder injury or a, strain here, and they're going to have surgery after the season, and they're still playing because they care. and it's not your job to worry about it. It's theirs. They want it. They want to play. And it's like that.
I get a sense with the Iowa program and the Kentucky program, Scott, they're both very solid, strong programs. I don't think either of these teams is just going to show up tomorrow. Or Saturday. I think Kentucky's similar to Iowa in that you have invested guys that want to win.
Yeah. And based on last night's little music hoedown between the two programs, it got pretty feisty. Deontay Vines during Iowa's song really started talking some serious smack, and that started going both ways. I legitimately thought that there might be a fight.
Set the scene for people. What was the setup and kind of what went on? What did you guys get to see last night?
Yeah, we were at the Wild Horse Saloon for their official team welcoming party, and both teams, and they have two levels, and on one side you had kind of on the upper level you had a lot of Iowa players. On the right side you had a lot of Kentucky players, and then on the floor they were kind of divided too, and they had some contests. One was like hot chicken eating contest, and so they brought up 5 people, and it was kind of like
Yahweh won that thing, right?
Well, he won the individual part. He had 15. I think 13 was the second place.
So were they wings or like chicken? What were they eating?
I think they were like breasts, I want to say. I mean, they were it was like incredible hot. I mean, like
he ate 10 of those things?
15.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Man. I wonder how he's feeling this morning.
I don't know. I would not be feeling good. I tell you that.
I mean, he may be tapping out of some reps this morning.
Yeah. Well, every time he gets in a 3-point stats, I think probably Seth Benson wants to tap out of a snap or two.
And the offensive linemen as well. They're like, somebody else come in here.
You got the breath. And then, like I said, the linebackers are going, I'm out. I'm opting out of this. I'm not playing after he gets down in his stance. But anyway,
Kentucky won the team contest, but Yahweh won the individual.
Yeah, YA was mad too. He, because they were counting him up, and it was 50-49, and after he'd already got the championship belt, and then all of a sudden he just looks. He's like this. Going, because like they brought up, I think Mason Richmond was one, Tyler Endries was one. I mean, offensive linemen and stuff, and Bo Stevens. I guess
should have had Drew Stevens in there.
Yeah, yeah. Drew was upstairs with Tori Taylor, but Bo Stevens walks up there. Like he spent like $1,500 on his boots and his hat and everything, and so he's in heaven right now, but. But anyway, so they had that contest. Then like a group of 5 did they worked on a song with of each team. They worked on songs with a songwriter. I think the Iowa guy was like maybe the lead singer of Shenandoah, kind of a 1990s country singer, and another in Kentucky was on the different side. And it turned into kind of this song, country song / rap. Iowa's did, and it was like when they're holding the Music City Trophy, and Spencer was up there singing along, and then
is he playing guitar?
No, he can't. He's got a
that's right.
His shoulders all jacked up. But then Jay Higgins and Deontay Vines and I think it was Deshaun Lee were up there, and the rap got pretty strong, and there were some lyrics. I need to listen to them again because. By the time I had a chance to listen to him again, I was a little bit over the line myself. But they were calling out Deuce. They're talking about they're calling out the Wildcats, and the Wildcats were getting mad, and then it just became like this shouting match basically on the stage between Deontay and another player from Kentucky, and it was like whoa, and so. I don't know if this was staged or if they decided to do this because of, how, I won't say heated. It was, nobody got through any punches or anything, but how feisty it got. They made sure Iowa was completely out of the wild horse before Kentucky was allowed to leave the wild horse. And so there was a lot of John going back and forth and everything. And it was
that's
pretty
good.
intense.
I mean, that's good. That shows, again, that they care and that we should see guys going all out on Saturday.
Yeah. And every time like Deontay called out the Wildcats, like we're going to, I don't know the lyrics, but I suggest, somebody listens to them on Twitter, but Iowa players were standing and cheering, when they were calling them out. So they're invested. I think, Kentucky's invested too. I would, in fact, I know a couple of players were like, man, we need to save this for Saturday. We can't really be doing this tonight. And so, it was fun to watch. They were, and again, I think you're going to see a spirited game, no matter how good it is, the score, the weather is impacting. It's supposed to rain that day. But you're definitely going to see some good efforts from both teams, I think.
What have you seen I know it's limited practice time, but how much does the depth chart they release match up with what you saw at practice? I mean, is the offensive line? I know there was some shuffling on the offensive line. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, I think so. It looks like Nick DeYoung is more the right tackle, and Jennings Dunker. I tell you what, might be the biggest human I've ever seen. I used to. He's right up there with Alonzo Spellman, I think. But
hey, you don't just go into Solon and win that hay bale thing.
I know,
unless you're bringing some juice.
Well, you think about the guys that won in the past. Matt Kroll, going way back, and Tyler Linderbaum. They look like junior varsity in size compared to him. I mean, he's like 6'6", 6'7". If he's 320 pounds, 25 pounds, and looks like, I mean, seriously, he looks like he's got the potential to look like the mountain from Game of Thrones. so once his fundamentals catch up with his body, that dude's going to be a fucking machine. And I mean, I think he could be the best guard in college football, because he has got raw power like no other, and he's got size and a mean streak. It's just, how to put your hands, first step, make sure your backside knee is aimed at the opponent's crotch, drive, and do all the things that you need to do, which is why he's at Iowa. If he can get that accomplished. So I think it's kind of cool.
And then there'll be a bunch of NIL money and he'll go to Ohio State.
Maybe, or maybe you enter him in a chicken eating contest, Yeah. Well, Iowa does have, I think, the third most NIL money right now, but I think Penn State and Michigan will probably surpass them very quickly. But still, yeah. So I guess offensive line, it looked pretty close to the same. It was intriguing to watch Sam Laporta take snaps both under center and then in the open period. And I know, we know Brian Ferentz, he kind of likes to joke around sometimes. So he's like, all right, let's see what these guys see, while we're there. And all of a sudden he's in the shotgun and it's like a split beer. He's got like two backs next to him and he's faking the handoff one way and then he's rolling out. He hit Nico on an out route. And it was like, wow, I just started laughing. And some of the players were looking at me like, what are you laughing at? But I'm like, this is too much. I can't take it anymore.
What'd you see at safety with Kayvon?
No, I didn't really see anything there.
Okay.
So I don't know.
What do you anticipate seeing?
I think what we'll see Castro when it's a 4 DB set, like 4-3, and then when they go to a cash, I think you'll see Wampa play back there.
And Castro move up to cash.
Cash, yeah.
Castro cash.
Yeah. Castro. Yeah.
I like it. There's an NIL opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Bank.
Check into Castro.
Yep. Financial institutes. Get after them.
Yeah, exactly. Or I was thinking about that last night when I was at the Johnny Cash Bar and Grill till 1 a.m. that I'm like, there's like a T-shirt there and it just said cash. I'm like, they ought to buy this for Iowa's secondary, but or I buy it for myself. Hey, I'm here. I'm going to the museum later today, though. That's for damn sure.
You mentioned Nico, and good news. You guys broke that earlier this week with availability. He'll be back for a 6th year. Obviously, I was talking to somebody about it yesterday. It's almost like adding a good receiver from the transfer portal. Iowa's in the transfer portal trying to get receivers. Well, they got one in their own program that's coming back. That's addition. Yeah,
it's a huge addition because, I mean, for a guy that's already been there, he had it, and people forget. I mean, he was in there in the first, he was a winter enrollee, and so he's already had 5 years plus that. So the other day and during our interview sessions, I walk up to him. He kind of got out there and he was by himself, and I just said, "Hey, are you going to be?" I said, "Have you lined up an agent yet? Getting ready for the NFL draft training, just to just feeling him out."
Yeah.
And he just said, "No, I think I'm coming back. I'm definitely coming back." I'm like, "Okay, really?" And then I'm like,
"News."
And then at that point, the reporter part of me went, "Oh, damn, I left my phone over there by my computer. So it's like, and I'm like, okay, well, why'd you come back? And then and Nico has got an incredible personality. He's really a lot of fun. He's, witty and sarcastic at times, but also just very informative. And, he just said, look, I think this is the best way for me to reach my goals. And I'm like, but you're already a graduate. You graduated in the spring, and he just said, look, I'm just going to take classes to keep you eligible. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to work towards anything. And, and now he goes, I actually had a class this fall I liked best of all, and it didn't really matter. So I'm just going to, and that makes sense. I mean, for him, because he's not an NFL prospect right now. I mean, if Matt Vandenberg can't even get a free agent deal with 100+ catches and, some skill, and he's certainly some speed, Nico Ragaini is not going to either. So I think this is good for him. Now he's with a different quarterback that probably will enhance his positioning. And when you look at the position of Iowa's offense going forward, it is reliant upon, I think, at least one high-level receiver coming in. And, like, let's say it's Seth Anderson, for instance. If they can somehow get him, and they're making a big push for him, he could be the Z receiver, kind of like Amir Smith-Marset. He doesn't have that top end speed, but I think he's a little more refined as a route runner and pass catcher. And it would allow Nico Ragaini to play more of the slot, which I think is where he was most effective a few years ago with Brandon Smith and Amir Smith-Marset and Tyrone Tracy there. And then you look at the X position. I think that's some place where, like, Deontay Vines, I think, has positional flexibility, but I think he could probably thrive there because he is built pretty thick, and I think he runs good routes. I think he's got a lot of upside. So
he's really athletic too. He jumps well. He can high point the ball. He's got a pretty nice skill set.
Yeah. And so I think if you look at those three, and then maybe Brody Brecht, depending on how much longer he plays, he actually did return to practice, so I think he'll play on Saturday. That's not bad. And then if you throw on Isaac, I think it's Tesla is how it's pronounced. I always want to say Tesla.
I'm feeling worse about that one as we go on, Scott, just because of the offers he's getting. And I know there's NIL money that's going to be thrown his way, probably a lot. So, that ties back to our earlier conversation, because this is a kid now that has A&M, Colorado, Miami. I mean, he's visited Iowa and Iowa State, and maybe those are the things that carry him through. But that one's going to be challenging.
Yes, it is. You were hoping for a quick answer. From a D2 guy from the Midwest. Oh, yeah, sure, come to Iowa. And then
now you saw the film like I did.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take an expert to realize, hey, this kid could help us.
Yeah, he's not exactly. I mean, when you think Division II, now I saw some really good Division II players when I was in Missouri, Northwest Missouri State, and they had some receivers that could have started and thrived at Iowa. Let's put it that way. Jamaica Rector was one, Tony Miles was one, but I think this is Isaac Tesla is certainly one that can, if he was there, I think he's a starter for Iowa. I think he's a guy that can go out and win one-on-one matchups. My fear for Iowa with like Brody Brecht is, how much longer does he play that? How much longer before he says, you know what, I've got a golden ticket, I can't ruin this.
It's not helping that he's having difficulty staying healthy.
Exactly. He's been injured. He's had hamstring issues. Not saying that I think he could be a very good football player at Iowa. Maybe one of the top 6, 7, 8 receivers in the Big Ten maybe at his high point. That's good, but he's not going to be making 8 figures in football. He will in baseball. So I just wonder how much longer is this going to last. And I think Deontay Vines has a chance to really take a step forward and become a really good player. So
then you got Bostic. Mm-hmm. He's been hurt, and that's hurt his development a little bit, but they like the potential there. And then the three new guys coming in. But I'm with you. If they can add a Seth Anderson, maybe another, just a veteran that you can get in there and can help bridge the gap a little bit to, in reloading the position, so to speak. that would be key.
Because I mean, when you have these two tight ends, provided that everybody comes back intact, we're not going to pretend otherwise until something happens. But if you have Lachey and Eric All, you're going to want to run 45 to 55% of your snaps through two tight end. And I know people are going, oh, that's the same way. No, you know what? You know what's also pretty good about that? The fact that TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant combined for 27 touchdown catches in a 2-year period. The last 3 years, Iowa quarterbacks have combined for 27 touchdown passes. So you like good tight ends who can catch the ball from good quarterbacks. You don't need to be, to run the oop-de-oop from the, varsity blues, So, and if you have 3 good receivers to go along with 2 good tight ends. I mean, remember all the angst over whether or not Tyrone Tracy was going to play because you had, Nico Regani's out there and, Ragaini. Well, he was Regaini then. So Brandon Smith, Demir Smith-Marset, how's he going to get on the field? And, if you have 2 good tight ends and 3 good wide receivers that don't leave the field very often, I think you're in great shape and don't disrupt that. And I think they've got the running backs. I know we talked a little bit about this last week. I really like Terrell Washington. I think he can walk in as a contributor right away. I think Caleb Johnson's your number 1. I'm not going to suggest otherwise, but I think he can be your change of pace back, your Damian Sims, if you will, to the Albert Young that is Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, and LaShawn Williams has been good. LaShawn has been good too. I don't worry about that position. I don't worry about tight end and running back. It's receiver and offensive line, I think, this offseason that need to take steps forward. You guys also found out last night from Spencer that he will be at Iowa this spring rehabbing. What's he got? 6-8 months rehab, and
at least.
And he's going to help out in the program, do a little coaching, help Cade McNamara out. Do you get a sense of kind of what is in his mind, just in terms of, he's just going to kind of take it as it comes, and then like after this semester, kind of reevaluate where things are at?
We had a long conversation about a lot of stuff, but certainly about that. And some of the point was that he absolutely loves the sport. He lives the sport. He does it he loves it in a way that I don't think I've seen out of many players. And probably he's like Connor McCaffrey in basketball, that you just know that, yes, he's smart enough to do other things, but can he do anything besides football? No, it'll kill him. So he's, because of the rehab and everything, if he's connected with the team, then they can take care of him in Iowa. And so that makes perfect sense for him to be on the roster. Iowa feels like it wants to help him out in that. And then he can kind of help direct or whatever. I mean, one of the options, I suppose, for him to look into is some sort of a graduate assistant type gig, where he gets those credits and those duties, and maybe does it in the spring and then the fall. And he was really hopeful that he'd have a shot at the NFL. He knew he wasn't going to be a draft pick. Nobody expected that. But to go to a pro day and unleash his arm on a lot of those routes, and his, he respects, he's very self-aware, let's put it that way, on what his strengths and weaknesses are. And so he was like, well, maybe if I stay at Iowa in the spring and then through the fall, even when I don't play, but I'm connected to the team, that I can continue to rehab and train. And then the following spring, he could throw at a pro day. And at that point, he could be, signed as a camp arm for an NFL team. And his mind is sharp. He knows the game.
Incredibly high football IQ.
Yeah. As high as anybody. I mean, they've had some really good quarterbacks who knew the game at a high level. He's the best of that. Performance is different, obviously, but I just think that, I think his future, and he probably realizes it too, is coaching. That, and if he can somehow get, and I brought up to him just on the side about Zeb Noland, the former quarterback at Iowa State, who I think went to South Carolina to be a grad assistant, and then all of a sudden got pressed into duty, and I said, you can still be connected with the team, but what happens if blah, blah, blah. I think he doesn't really like the idea of another year of college playing football, but he likes the idea of being around the sport another year and stuff. So, he's going through a lot of things that I think anybody would at that age. I know my kids do too, as far as what's the next step of my life. He's got a girlfriend, but he's also, loves football. He sees how many hours football coaches spend trying to put things together. He's got a lot going on mentally to go along with his physical issue, but he tore both the labrum and the rotator cuff. So that is a serious ass injury. And it's going to take all of, at minimum, 6 months from the injury to give it a shot, but it's more like probably a year before he's somewhat healthy in that area.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge, monkey wrench thrown in his, what his plan was. I mean, to finish up at the bowl game, go through pro day, get a chance to get into a camp, to now, all of that being put on hold, and then having to be introspective at, what is my future? It's such a change for him. But I get a sense that Spencer, the second winner of the Duke Slater Golden Gavel Award, very much deserved, very well deserved by Spencer. And Scott handed that to him last week. He'll figure it out. He's a super smart kid, and wherever life takes him, I think he's going to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, if I was a career advisor for him, is that.
What did he go to school for? What's his degree in? Do you know?
Football, I think. I really don't know. I don't know.
Graduate with honors.
Yeah, exactly. Or, at least in practice and stuff. I think he's, my career advice for him is, while you're doing this, see if Iowa can carve out a grad assistant role for you. See if you can get that kind of taken care of, or at least a master's degree, because then that way that translates to college, pro, whatever. And, Kirk has a lot of connections. So does Brian in the NFL. And then once this all wraps up, he said, he goes, no offense to you, but I don't want to be sitting here at 50 years old going, I wish I would have at least tried, and I get that, because you just don't want to leave any money on the table. So I think in his case, if he can do that for 3 semesters, something like that at Iowa, go to that pro day, be the thrower at pro day. And then, maybe one team says, you know what, this kid's sharp. He's really smart. He's got a big arm. We don't think he'll make the team, or maybe he's just come to camp and see what happens. Maybe he'll be number 3 quarterback and on the practice team. But that's the dream and goal of every player, and have that kind of sidelined by a really vicious, crazy twist of his shoulder, is cruel, and again, he doesn't deserve to be drafted. He knows that, but getting that opportunity is something that I think he'd like to at least have that opportunity. And then I think big picture, he'll be fine going to the Patriots with Brian, right?
Yeah. Do you want to go down that rabbit hole of assistant coaching, or do you want to wait on that to next week? Because people are obviously asking about that. And it's really hard to know right now, because like the players, I think the coaches that are on staff right now are pretty invested in this portion of the season, which is the development. A lot of younger players getting looks and evaluated during bowl prep. And then I think after Saturday, then they take time to step back and evaluate their positions on the staff. And then obviously, as we said, January is going to be an important month for recruiting.
Yeah, right. And so, what happens after the bowl game, who knows? I mean, even guys, you look back in the past at like Chris White and Bobby Kennedy, And Greg Davis retired after the bowl game, a few years ago. And then, those things work themselves out. It's just
Derek Foster. Derek Foster moved on, and who's the guy that went to Wyoming?
Polasek.
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 Yeah. So, I mean, there's been movement. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. So I think overall, you just, we just kind of wait and see. But I think there's probably going to be movement on the staff. I do. I think, it's, is the passing game going to be, John Budmeyer helped out a lot with that, with the creation of what they wanted to try to do. But when you look at the performance of the offense, there wasn't a lot of time given to Spencer Petras. He doesn't have a lot of mobility. The receivers were hurt a lot. And were they any good anyway? I don't know. I mean, they're in the different stages of their development, let's put it that way.
That's key, man. The evaluation this offseason of personnel and plan is critical.
Yeah. So it's really kind of, I don't know, where do you, so who do you blame? Everybody wants somebody to blame. Brian has been the whipping boy for that, and Spencer's been right behind it. And I don't think it's fair. And I'm not saying that Brian's a great offensive coordinator or whatever. I think Brian, like Spencer, they're both incredibly intelligent when it comes to football. They know the game at a level that a fraction of the level I can only dream of attaining. But, how did the plan come together versus the execution versus the, what they had available, really, we talked about the offensive line and, the challenges they've had, the lack of development, the attrition, the youth, and then receivers. I mean, they were behind, not the 8 ball, they were behind the whole freaking pool table from week 1 when you only have Arlen Bruce out there among scholarship receivers and stuff. So, Spencer wasn't very accurate. Just a lot of issues that it's really going to be a challenge for them they got to figure it out, but there's time to do that too once they get the players in place.
No doubt. You think you are predicting a relatively comfortable Iowa victory on Saturday? I don't want to spoil your prediction.
I think Iowa wins this. I think Iowa can win comfortably, provided the offense doesn't make a ton of mistakes. So, I know that's
rely on the defense and special teams, like when you've been successful this year. Opportunistic offense, put the offense, take advantage of what the other 2 phases give you.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a game where you go, oh, why aren't they throwing the ball deep or stuff like that. I mean,
duck and chuck.
Yeah, risk averse is not the way to go. I mean, Spencer and I did talk a little bit about Joe, and I said, if I had advice for Joe, it's really 2 things: have fun and don't do anything stupid. They're going to let him run. Whether they let him run out of zone read or not, yeah, I still think they will, but they're going to let him run and they're going to let him throw. But don't throw the ball into triple coverage. Don't throw the ball across your body towards the middle of the field. Throw the ball away, punt. There's no sin in punting except if, you're one of my colleagues at The Athletic and you hate it, and make fun of it.
That's the thing with, you just don't know, because guys are competitive and they think they can make plays that aren't there. And that's when you get in trouble, and he can't do, that's the one he can't do. He can't take chances that are going to hurt the team.
Yeah, that's really the key there. I mean, because if he can actually just,
Kentucky's not going up and down the field on this defense. Kentucky's going to have is going to struggle mightily against this defense.
Yeah, they're not going to go 10 plays, 80 yards. If they do it, it's going to be once, and there's going to be a 50-yard pass because of it or something like that. It's an accident, So, yeah, I think Iowa wins. I think Iowa wins comfortably. I do. Projection, I don't know. We got to get to that segment, right? We saw one more.
Yeah. Well, and we got to do our bowl picks.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. We got to get our bowl picks here. So I got to
Before,
try to.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so, yeah, I'm just gonna. You can go ahead and talk. I'm gonna write these down really quick
Okay.
in the line. So
I will. I'm going to update listeners on what the other sports are doing this week. Iowa men's basketball this evening at Nebraska, sold out arena over in Nebraska. Chris Murray and Connor McCaffrey expected back, huge boost. Be interesting to see how this team responds to an epic loss, Scott, against Eastern Illinois last week. Really, I think this week will tell us a lot, just in terms of two road games that Iowa, well, they're favored tonight. I'm not sure if they will be at Penn State, but these are two really important games against teams that are kind of potentially in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, trying to get in that upper half. Iowa's has a home loss already in conference to Wisconsin. That was a tough loss. These are huge games this week, because then you've got Indiana, one of the favorites in the Big Ten, coming to Carver Hawkeye Arena, I believe, on the 5th of January. So really important stretch for the men's team, and interested to see what it looks like with Chris and Connor coming back. Chris, particularly after a decent sized layoff.
Yeah, these are really pivotal games, as you mentioned. I mean, especially how does Iowa respond after last week's just unmitigated disaster against Eastern Illinois? I mean, that's just a game you cannot lose. No matter how poorly you play, this is one that's going to bite them for the rest of the season. Up until they get in the tournament, if they get in the tournament, they will be blind resume test. This team's won X number of quad ones, twos, and then, oh my God, they had a loss in the quad ocho,
Yeah.
So now it means that this eliminated three mulligans for Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's a shame, but now they have to play through it. And I think the thing is, if they could get to a 500 record in the Big Ten, ultimately they'll probably get their chance. But that's not going to be easy, because this league, it's always really deep, and it may be deeper than ever. I don't know if it's greater than we've seen some really great teams over the years, but I can tell you this, I mean, you can go all the way to team 14, and it's really good across the board.
Yeah, no doubt. And that means Iowa has to go 10-9 and get some road wins here as well, giving up the home game, the home loss to Wisconsin. So important there. The women are back at it tonight as well. Carver Hawkeye Arena, 8 p.m. against Purdue. Women want to get off back into Big Ten play on a high note here. So important there. And then for wrestling, the Soldier Salute over at Extreme Arena starts this morning. I think it started at 10 a.m., the first session this morning. So if you're in the area listening to the podcast, there's tickets available. That'll be a great event. There's a lot of really good wrestlers there, and that will go on today and tomorrow over at Extreme Arena. So good action in town if you weren't able to make it to Nashville and are looking for things to do this week and get out of the house a little bit. It's up to almost 50 degrees here today, Scott. So it's balmy in Iowa City.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, especially after what it was like, when I left. And so, yeah, this is it's good. It's a good time. I mean, having that Soldier Salute is going to be interesting. It's kind of fascinating how Iowa used to have the Midlands always. Yeah. They used to go to the Midlands, and now they've kind of transitioned to this. I think that the fact that they've also have female wrestlers, allows them to kind of hit that. I think that
this
area.
event
and I know
has
this is
a lot
one way
of
to grow the area.
I think it has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
This event.
No question. Yeah, absolutely. And so, will it supplant the Midlands? Maybe,
Yeah.
It could. Who knows? I mean, wrestling's kind of a different animal altogether. And but having it this time of year and in a mecca like Iowa City for wrestling, at an arena that really embraces this kind of stuff. I mean, shoot, they might be able to, flex out part of Carver Hawkeye Arena at some point with this. And
Interesting. Saw the bracket at 125 this morning, Scott. You've got Spencer Lee at the top of the bracket and Drake Ayala at the bottom of the bracket. So,
oh, nice.
Could be on a collision course to wrestle against each other tomorrow in the championship round. So something to keep an eye on if you're a wrestling person, or even if you're not a wrestling person. That's a high level competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Well, are you going to head over there?
I'm going to try to pick a spot. I'm doing another podcast this afternoon with somebody, and I'll have that out tomorrow morning. But little teaser there if people will be interested in that interview type podcast with a recruit. So we'll do that. I'm going to try to get out there at some point. I'm trying to keep an eye on the brackets and maximize my time out there to shoot photos and get as much as I can, but going to try to make it out as best I can out there. Got the credentials. So chance to get out and watch a little bit of wrestling outside of Carcaver Hawkeye Arena will be nice.
Great arena, great area there. So I am going to hit later this afternoon after I finish the story. I'm going to hit the Johnny Cash Museum. So
nice.
That's my guy. So
envious and jealous of that, no doubt. I've never been to Nashville.
Yeah,
I love it. You on board with Nashville?
I am now. I've never been here to hang out, to be here more than I flew into the airport once and drove to Alabama to cover a college football game in the 2005 Division II championship game in Florence, Alabama. Stopped by the National Coon Dog Cemetery outside of there. It was interesting just because I'm serious. It was, you had like all these tombstones to coon dogs and, here lies.
There's important parts of everybody's lives that we don't know about.
Yeah, there were a lot of important dogs' lives down there. And, here lies Clem. He was a good dog and he hunted well. And people put their beer can on the tombstone. And we almost were late for the flight coming back because we had to see it. It was just like we'd heard about it and we wanted to see it. But no, so that was my only other experience with Nashville until this week. So far, I've been blown away by how cool this town is. So I can't wait to come back and visit again, although I don't know that I want to drive here after what the length of yucky driving it was the other day.
I'll try to get there at some point. It's not this point. All right, Scott, let's wrap up with our picks. I'll let you roll here with point spreads and matchups, and I'll give out my wrong predictions. As I've done all season for everyone. Go the other way. Stay away from Hal's picks.
I tell you what, I didn't bring the sheet of paper with all of our stats.
That's a shame.
Yeah. But
you can hit me with that next week.
There you go.
The final result.
Right. Well, we both did pick Wisconsin. So Wisconsin won by 7. So I think that was I don't know the spread, but I think we were picking Wisconsin.
It was 4.
Yeah, so
I think Wisconsin was laying 4.
Yeah. So we have 8 more games here from the Big Ten in bowl action, and we'll start today with the Mighty Gophers, -10 against Syracuse at the Pinstripe Bowl. I am going to take the Mighty Gophers. I think they are going to roll, especially even though Syracuse played really well and beat Purdue early in the season, but as we know, teams change this time of year, and I think Minnesota, with keeping most of its players and having that running back who's like a sledgehammer, I think that's something that travels well to the Big Apple.
I'm torn on this one. I agree with how you handicap things, but I'm going to take the points with Syracuse being relatively close to home. I don't know what type of crowd they'll have there, and I know their roster's been depleted a bit, but I like Dino as a coach, and I think Minnesota wins, but I'm not sure they win by double digits. So I'll take the points.
Okay, gotcha. All right, the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina, which the winning coach will get doused with mayo. NC State -1 against Maryland And this is an old ACC battle. This is one that they wanted. I'm happy for them they got it because they're excited about it. I'm going to take the mighty Terrapins. I think they, with Talia Tagovailoa and some pretty good receivers, I think they'll have a chance to put up some points and beat one of their old rivals.
What's the points in this?
-1 for NC State as the favorite.
Yeah, I'll take Maryland in this one. NC State, another team that's kind of had some attrition on the roster. And I think, like you said, this is an important game for Maryland. Regional game recruiting implications, two schools that recruit against each other quite often. So, yeah, I'll go Big Ten on this one.
Yeah, there's still a lot of resentment for one another down there. So, that always works. I guess that would be like if Missouri was playing Kansas State or Kansas or somebody in the, Iowa State in a bowl game or something like that. Illinois, this is the hardest one. I think of all the bowl games among Power 5 teams to figure out for me, this is the hardest one. Yeah. Illinois -1.5 against Mississippi State, which of course is without Mike Leach, who tragically passed away. This one is, again, I'm really like, are they going to play for Coach Leach and pull one out, or is it Illinois just going to be able to run the ball on them? I'm going to go with Mississippi State. I don't know. Maybe the old Pirate.
Is Chase Brown out?
I think he opted out.
Okay. Yeah, that's big.
They're still favored.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with Mississippi State here. Emotional. Very emotional. It's going to be emotional for them.
Yeah.
Not that Illinois hasn't faced its own emotions with Coach Bielema and Brett's losses this year too. And it's one of those games I think is important, really important for both sides. Both will show up. But I'm going to go with Mississippi State as well.
Yeah, I think this could be like a last-second field goal type of thing that happens, which will make it entertaining. This one, I don't think this matchup would have happened, Rob, if the Citrus Bowl would have known what we know now. Purdue against LSU, 14.5 the spread for LSU, because no Aiden O'Connell, no Charlie Jones, no Jeff Brom. There's, I don't know all the – I saw Keyshawn Boutte, who's not – he's going to the NFL, he declared. Yeah. But so what? I mean, LSU and Purdue, their recruiting differences are as stark as it gets. I'm going LSU. I'm throwing the points. It's a lot of points, 14.5. But I think this could be an ugly game.
Yeah, I think if Brian Kelly gets a chance to run this up from his old Notre Dame Purdue days, I think he will, and I think he can.
Yeah.
Just too much lost on Purdue's side in terms of, it's been an offensive program with Jeff Brom, and you're missing your key offensive players. That's just not a good formula. And I think LSU is going to use this kind of as a stepping stone year one for Brian Kelly to hopefully, for them at least, kind of catapult them into next season where they try to take another step forward. So, yeah, I'm going to go with LSU. That is a lot of points. I don't like the hook, but I'll throw it.
I think this has the potential to end up like it was about 4 or 5 years ago when Purdue played Auburn here in Nashville, and it was like 62-20 something,
Yeah.
And I think it has that potential too, just because, and what's a team's motivation when you don't have the coach? And in fact, the interim coach is Brian Brom, and he's not going to be at Purdue. After this, Ryan Walters will be the head coach. So that's pretty tough. Now we get to the Big Four, counting the one that here, but the Rose Bowl, Penn State versus Utah -2.
I love this matchup, man. Yeah. I love this. I'm just looking at, because I like both of these teams, just how they played this year.
Yeah, I'm digging it too, and I'm gonna go Utah. I really like the way they finished. I like Penn State too. I think Penn State's a really good team, and this one could be kind of like when Penn State went there the last time they played UCLA, I think with USC, I'm sorry, with Sam Darnold, and they were throwing the ball back and forth and kind of at the end. But I like Utah. Last year they came so close. They almost won, and giving up 2 points here, I don't think that's going to matter. I think it's going to be like a field goal game, maybe a touchdown game. So I'm going to go with the Utes to pull out one of the last traditional Rose Bowls we'll ever get.
I'm going Big Ten here. I'm going to put my faith in Penn State, and I think both of these teams are very motivated, and I think it's a coin flip game. So in that case, I'm going to go with Penn State. I don't have any in-depth analysis. I just kind of like Penn State's team and where it's headed.
Yeah. The thing I like about what Penn State has done, and I think this is really cool, and it does show respect for the Rose Bowl, is, for a lot of players who are either that are going to go to the NFL, they're waiting. They declared for the NFL, but we're going after the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
And that's cool because, no matter what people think about meaningless bowl games, it doesn't matter. You might get hurt and all that stuff. When you look at it, when you boil it down, hey, I got to play in the Rose Bowl. And you got to be in Pasadena, and you got to see try to see the sunset over the San Gabriel Mountains. And it's a mystique that there's just nothing like it. And so I respect that players that may leave, players that may even opt out or transfer, are going to wait until after the Rose Bowl to do it. And that really makes sense. Now we've got the heavyweight bowls, the playoffs. Playoffs? Ohio State versus Georgia. Georgia's given up 6.5. And one thing I've been fascinated by with this is that I think Ohio State's the only team that can beat Georgia. And because they have a different style that allows and players that can attack down the field. And so I think this is something that can cause problems. That said, I'm picking Georgia to win. I think, Ohio State may take the lead early and may build a lead, and then I could see Georgia just being able to methodically, continuously beat them down. And so I'm going to take the Bulldogs.
I'm with you. I think this season's been Georgia and everybody else. I think, as we've seen everything unfold as the year's gone on, there have been close calls for some teams, and, TCU got here. Great story, but really had to pull out a lot of games, that were in the balance late. Michigan down its best player. Ohio State still with questions on defense. I think Georgia's the most complete team. And if you're telling me that, it's only 6.5 points because it's Ohio State, I'll throw the points. It's just, to me, this one, maybe Ohio State bounces back, but it's not like they weren't motivated to beat Michigan. They just got their ass beat. So I'm not sure how they rebound from that and recover from that to beat the best team in the country.
Yeah. I think I picked it at like Georgia 38-31, but but that's only because I respect that CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison and, Abuka and the running backs they have, that they have the firepower to keep up. But the mistakes that they made against Michigan defensively is what gives me pause. Because if they don't make those mistakes, if they don't allow receivers just to run, in single coverage down the field and pick up all those big plays, and then let Donovan Edwards run free, then they're winning that game and they're in the playoffs. But the other one, Michigan -7.5 against Texas Christian University. I'm taking TCU.
This one is hard to handicap for me. Yeah. Not that that's saying anything.
Yeah.
But I've gone back and forth in my mind on this one a lot.
I picked TCU, and I picked TCU to win too. And it's not like I have any great strategy as to why. There's something I like about TCU and the way that they've been resilient all year. I like Max Dugan. I think he's a great quarterback, and I think he's got the opportunity to keep them in the game and score points, and maybe the ball's in his hands late, and it's like 31-27 or something like that. So 7.5. That would suggest the other outcome, which is Michigan's just too physical along the line of scrimmage, and TCU can't do anything to stop them. Then they force some turnovers, and then it's a blowout, which I can see that scenario taking place too. I'm just going to, for the sake of this, and bet on the latter, which is TCU scoring a major upset, one of the biggest upsets in college football playoff history.
I'm going to go with the Big Ten here. My default is to go with the Big Ten again. And again, I don't like that hook, that 7.5. If it was 7, I'd feel much better. 6.5, even better. I think this is kind of jacked up because it's Michigan against TCU. Obviously people that gamble know you set the line to try to get even action on both sides. And this is anticipating that most of the money is going to come in on Michigan. If you go too low. So I think the number's a little inflated, but as you said, I think Michigan is so dominant up front, especially on offense, that they'll be able to control the ball a little bit more than some teams that TCU's played this year. And I was impressed with what Michigan did against Ohio State, even though I banged on Ohio State's defense. I think Michigan's a pretty complete team. And I think I wouldn't be surprised either way if this is a touchdown game and I lose because of the hook. But I'm going to guess it's probably in the 10 to 13 point range for Michigan. But again, my picks have sucked all year.
and finally, the biggest game of the bowl season.
Exactly.
Maybe 1B once the championship game is set. And that is Iowa -1.5. They're actually a favorite in a bowl game against Kentucky. The over-under is 31, by the way. So that's hilarious.
It actually has come down.
Yeah, I know. I mean, ever since quarterbacks are getting hurt, opting out, transferring, portaling, defenders are now opting out. Kayvon Merriweather, DeAndre Square. This is welcome to the new world of bowl games. And this is a microcosm. As I said, I'm taking Iowa. I'm bullish on Iowa on this one. And I think I don't see Kentucky being able to do much offensively. I see Iowa attacking. I see Iowa causing turnovers. And I see Iowa taking advantage of them. Maybe it's just Drew Stevens taking advantage of them. 5 turnovers and turning into 5 field goals. And it's something like that. But I think Iowa wins. I think Iowa wins decisively. So I'm throwing the mighty 1.5 points and going with the Hawkeyes here in Nashville.
Yeah, I would give Kentucky a slight edge offensively because of some of the young receivers they have. They've got some talent on the outside. But as Scott said, whoever lines up back there at quarterback, is he going to be able to have time to throw to those wide receivers? That's a huge question mark. I think Iowa's defense and special teams are the 2 best units that will be out on the field by a lot on Saturday. And I don't think the point spread is high enough to make me shy away from that. I think Iowa wins, as I said, 13-10. If I'm going to stray away from that prediction, I think it's Iowa by a lot more than that, one way or the other. If Kentucky wins this, it's going to be by a hair. And it's going to be by Iowa's offense killing it as it's done in different spots this year. If the offense hurts the team, noticeably, tangibly, just turns the ball over, allows the Kentucky to have advantageous field position, win that battle of field position, I think that's the only way Kentucky can win this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm going to throw a score out there, because I probably should, is I'll throw out 17-3. Or let's go 16-3. A touchdown and 3 field goals, and
no safeties.
All right, 2 touchdowns and a safety. Maybe you need to include some safeties, no doubt about it. So
there needs to be a safety in this game, or like a blocked extra point that's returned for
Oh
2 points or something like that. Wild has got to happen in this game with this season.
yeah, exactly. Well, what I keep waiting for the NFL is the 1 point. There's a chance at 1 point, and what it is somebody gets a safety on a 2 point conversion or extra point attempt. So can you imagine that somebody actually gets the 1 point for that? You know, so I don't know how that happens other than maybe somebody's going over the goal line, the ball pops out, and it's like one of those old Son of Football Follies videos, and the ball just rolls 80 yards and the wind keeps rolling it, and then it rolls out of the back of the end zone or something. But I would actually worth, that's like an own goal there.
Yes.
Get that. Just do it, let this happen, please. But I don't know. But yeah, this is the end, and New Year's Eve in Nashville, Tennessee, and then the real party begins and for the Iowa football team, and probably some nervous couple of days, I think.
Turning the page to 23 after this game, and I think we're going to see something weird happen on Saturday. I have a feeling something weird is going to happen in this game, something unusual. It's just kind of been that type of season.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think maybe it's a zone read pass from Sam Laporta to tackle eligible Mason Richmond.
I'm for that. I'm definitely for any wild stuff they can create.
Yeah. Might as well have fun. I think that's kind of been the theme, if you will, down here a little bit, is they've been more relaxed. And really, why get, Kirk can get stressed because Kirk gets stressed about everything. But I think they're just kind of being loose, and that seems to be a good thing. And the defense knows what they've got, and the offense, it's like, hey, let's just have some fun. And if they can do that, if they can block some people up front, and Caleb, put all your eggs in the Caleb Johnson basket, you're in good shape.
11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Central Time, Saturday morning, New Year's Eve, Iowa, Kentucky, ABC. If you're not at the game in Nashville, should be a good time and hopefully entertaining game. And we'll close the book on 2022, and then we'll turn the page, and next week look forward to 23 and kind of catch up maybe on some coaching news if there is any, and we'll talk more about men's and women's basketball and wrestling too, now that they're getting back into competition. But we'll have recruiting in January as well. A lot to talk about. There's always something to talk about on the Hotspot podcast. We wouldn't have anticipated last week that there was friction between a Swarm Collective and the athletic department. Boom, story to talk about. So we'll see what next week has to offer as the Hawkeye world turns. And we'll be back. Scott will be back home then, and we'll look forward to talking to all you folks. Hopefully everybody had fun in the chat room today. We're starting to build kind of a community in there of people, like-minded people that bitch and moan about things. And we embrace and encourage that. So thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you. And hopefully everybody has a happy and safe new year. And we will talk to you next week. Say goodbye, Scott.